everyone. It's story time with Grandma Dee. Won't you come and sit with me? Today we're going to read a story about a baby lamb who is different than the other lambs. And he feels left out. Our lamb is crippled. Do you know what crippled means? It means that one of his legs isn't working right. It doesn't work like the other leg. And so he has a hard time walking and running. Have you ever seen someone who walks and runs with difficulty, who may be crippled? I bet you have. Let's find out how this baby lamb feels when he can't run and play with his friends. Our book today is called The Crippled Lamb. If you have a stuffed animal that you think would enjoy this story, go ahead and grab him. Just pause the video and we'll wait for you. The Crippled Lamb. Once upon a time, in a sunny valley, there lived a little lamb named Joshua. He was white with black spots, black feet, and very sad eyes. Joshua felt sad when he saw the other lambs with snow-white wool and no spots. He felt sad when he saw the other sheep with their moms and their dads, because he didn't have a mom or a dad. But he felt the saddest when he saw the other lambs running and jumping because he couldn't. Josh had been born with one leg that didn't work right. He was crippled. He always limped when he walked. That's why he always watched while the other lambs ran and played. Josh felt sad and alone, except when Abigail was around. Abigail was Josh's best friend. She didn't look like a friend for a lamb because she was an old cow. She was brown with white blotches that looked like rain puddles. Her belly was as round as a barrel, and her voice was always kind and friendly. Some of Josh's favorite hours were spent with Abigail. They loved to pretend they were on adventures in distant lands. Josh liked to listen to Abigail tell stories about the stars. They would spend hours on the hill looking into the valley. They were good friends. But even with a friend like Abigail, Josh still got sad. It made him sad to be the only lamb who could not run and jump and play in the grass. That's when Abigail would turn to Josh and say, "Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out." Josh wanted to believe her, but it was hard. Some days he just felt all alone. He really felt alone the day the shepherds decided to take the lambs to the next valley where there was more grass to eat. The sheep had been in this valley for so long, the ground was nearly bare. All the sheep were excited when the shepherds told them they were going to a new meadow. As they prepared to leave, Josh hobbled over and took his place at the edge of the group. But the others started laughing at him. "You're too slow to go all the way to the next valley. Go back, slowpoke." We'll never get there if we have to wait on you. Just go back, Joshua. That's when Josh looked up and saw the shepherds standing in front of him. They are right, my little Joshua. You better go back. This trip is too long for you. Go and spend the night in the stable. Josh looked at the man for a long time. Then he turned slowly and began limping away. When Josh got to the top of the hill, he looked down and saw all the other sheep headed toward the green grass. Never before had he felt so left out. A big tear slipped right out of his eye, rolled down his nose, and fell on a rock. Just then he heard Abigail, and Abigail said what she always says when Josh is sad. Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out. Slowly, the two friends turned and walked to the stable together. By the time they got to the little barn, the sun was setting like a big orange ball. Josh and Abigail went inside and began to eat some hay out of the feed box. They were very hungry, and the hay tasted very good. For a little while, Joshua forgot that he had been left behind. Go to sleep, my little friend, Abigail said after they finished eating. You've had a very hard day. Josh was tired, so he laid down in the corner on some straw and closed his eyes. He felt Abigail lie down next to him, and he was glad to have Abigail as a friend. Soon, Josh was asleep. At first, he was sleeping really good, all curled up next to Abigail's back. In his sleep, he dreamed. He dreamed of running and jumping just like all the other sheep. He dreamed of long walks with Abigail through the valley. He dreamed of being in a place where he never felt left out. Suddenly, strange noises woke him up. Abigail, he whispered, wake up, I'm scared. Abigail lifted her big head and looked around. The stable was dark everywhere, except for a small lamp hanging on a wall. Somebody's in here, Joshua whispered. They looked across the little dimly lit stable. There, lying on some fresh hay in the feed box, was a baby. A young woman was resting on a big pile of hay beside the feed box. Joshua looked at Abigail, thinking his friend would tell him what's going on. But Abigail was just as surprised as Josh. Josh looked again at the woman and the child, then limped across the stable. He stopped next to the mother and looked into the baby's face. The baby was crying. He was cold. The woman picked up the baby and put him on the hay next to her. Josh looked around the stable for something to keep the baby warm. Usually there was blankets, but not tonight. The shepherds had taken them all on their trip across the valley. Then Josh remembered his own soft, warm wool. Timidly, he walked over and he curled up close to the baby. Thank you, little lamb, the baby's mother said. Soon the little child stopped crying and went back to sleep. About this time, a man entered the stable and he was carrying some rags. I'm sorry, Mary. This is all the cover I could find. It's okay, said Mary. This little lamb has kept the new king warm. A king? Joshua looked at the baby and wondered who he might be. Mary said his name is Jesus, because she knew Josh's question. God's son. He came from heaven to teach us about God. Just then, there was another noise at the door. It was the shepherds, the ones who had left Joshua behind. Their eyes were big and they were excited. We saw a bright light and heard the angels. Then they saw Joshua next to the baby. Joshua, do you know who this baby is? He does now. It was the young mother Mary who was speaking. She looked at Joshua and said, God has heard your prayers, little lamb. This little baby is the answer. Josh looked down at the baby. Somehow he knew this was a special child, and this was a very special moment. He also understood why he had been born with a crippled leg, for if he was like the other sheep, he would have been in the valley. But since he was different, he was in the stable, among the very first to welcome Jesus into the world. He turned and walked back to Abigail and took his place beside his friend. You were right, he told her. God does have a special place for me. I hope you liked today's story of Joshua and Abigail. Do you remember what Abigail said to Joshua? It was, God has a special place for those who feel left out. And we saw that Joshua got to meet baby Jesus and kept baby Jesus warm. Now that's a very special place and a special job. Next time that you see someone who you think is feeling left out, remember, God has given them a special place, a special job, a special gift. We should always make sure that no one feels left out. Can you do that for me? I bet you can. Enjoy your day, and I can't wait to see you next time with Story Time with Grandma Dee.